This is a little kind of thing that I did with shifters a while back, and basically went over all the abilities of shifters. So I thought I would do one for druids. Not necessarily the best druid player on the server, but you know, I try my best. This is a level 78 druid, which is basically the highest, well, I'm 2 levels off of the highest possible level, so she's pretty uber. I actually only started her about maybe 2-3 years ago, which probably sounds like a long time, but in terms of a lot of my characters, that's pretty recently. So she is a Burr race, which is Rilmani, or Rilmani, depending on who you talk to, which gives a really big bonus to wisdom. So a caster, this is a caster druid, so it's basically all about spell casting. So there are kind of other versions of druids that you can build on higher ground and of course other places. And I chose the druid for 2 reasons. Number one being druids are probably, in terms of the endgame runs, they're one of the most critical classes that you can have, and I'll talk about why that is. Oh. Bandit just randomly attacked me. Yeah, it happens sometimes. They're not really a threat to me at this level. Anyway, so these guys are critical to endgame runs, and they're one of the classes that has had some of the most alterations from default Neverwinter Nights. So they have lots and lots of custom spells. So the heart of a caster are its spells, so I'll talk about that. So one of the other things you may notice on my stats is they're kind of crazy, and that's partly because of all the items that I have. Notice that wisdom is highest. Basically, most casters on the server, we want to max out whatever the casting stat is. And for a druid, they're divine casters, so they use wisdom as their casting stat. So we can talk about the different spells that druids have. So we'll just open up the spell book here, and I can just go through at least the important ones and some of the new ones that were created. Cantrips are really not a big deal, and haven't done anything with those. Level 1, there's a couple of new spells, but some of the good ones are Grease, which is a default Neverwinter Nights spell. Still pretty good here, kind of strategic. Camouflage actually gives concealment instead of just giving a hide bonus. Magic Fang has a little bit more changes. One of the newer spells that just got put in fairly recently is Deep Breath. So this actually allows you to breathe underwater, which in our mod, in our persistent world, there are areas that are technically underwater. You don't actually swim because Neverwinter Nights doesn't really have that capability, but you're considered underwater, and if you don't have some way of breathing water, you will basically get a message that says, you can't hold your breath, and then suddenly you will drop dead. So that's not very fun. So this is a spell to get around that. There are items that will do it. Haven't really used this spell too much. Foundation of Stone is another one. This one is really nice in that it keeps you from getting knocked down. The problem is you can't move after that. It's Foundation of Stone, so you're basically locked in the stone. And I'll show you guys kind of the function of that a little bit later, because it really needs to be used in a combination with another spell called Tortoiseshell. And most of these spells that are added have some basis in D&D lore. Hawkeye gives you a spot bonus, which is really not that awesome, because we did change spot a little bit. It gives you resistance to pickpocket checks, which may have done by default, but I don't remember. So level 2 spells, most of these are pretty much the same. Barkskin gives you an AC bonus. It's boosted based on the caster levels that you have. Most of these spells are boosted with your caster level. So it's of great benefit on higher ground to take as many levels as you can. Okay, so we've got the classic buff, uh, stat buff spells. Flame Lash does some damage. I don't know if that's actually up to date. I think this thing is boosted by lore. One of the other alterations we did to skills in general is if you're a spellcaster, a lot of spells are actually boosted by lore. So if you have a good lore skill, you can get bonus damage, which is nice. Lesser Restoration's pretty useful. There are a lot of things that inflict. Summons are pretty standard. One with the land does something very special on higher ground. You can, if you're in the right area, so it transports the caster to a safe resting spot. If you're in an outdoor natural area, it will do that for you, which is not useful most of the time, but there's a couple areas that it's really good. Blood Frenzy is modified a little bit, gives you a little bit of bonus. Desert Sirocco. This is a new spell that was added, which is kind of like Gust, which you might say, who cares about Gust? It knocks creatures down, but it can also kill certain monsters on higher ground that are killed only by gusting. It's low DC, but if you're kind of ridiculous high level, it actually gets pretty good. Flaming Sphere is another custom spell. Heat Body's another one. This is what we call a damage over time spell. So it basically, you cast it on a monster and it keeps ticking away with damage. Salt Ray's another custom spell. This one is not useful in most areas, but in our newest area, there are certain monsters that actually have specific vulnerability to that. Caustic Gel's another damage over time spell. So third level, Call Lightning is kind of your go-to spell for lowbie levels. So low levels up to about, I mean, for us, low levels are kind of anything below 40. So these are, it's okay. Boosted by lore, but doesn't get used that much. Poison is a really good spell. There are a lot of monsters that are vulnerable to poison. And if they fail a fortitude save, they can actually die. So it's an insta-death spell. So most of these are default. Remove Disease. This can be useful in legendary areas because there are a lot of nasty diseases that can only be removed by a caster with, say, level 55 caster level. So you say, how do I have level 55? I have 38 druid levels. If you have 20 legendary levels, those are levels beyond 40, that would give you 58 caster level. Greater Magic Fangs, pretty much the same. Infestation of Maggots is actually pretty nice. It actually ends up being a death spell. It works pretty well. Quillfire is kind of, it's an oddball spell. It always was. It doesn't get used that much, but it's kind of nice if you need magic damage. Then we have these two spells. So really Druid should probably get Flame Weapon, but for some reason the people that made Neverwinter Nights 1, Neverwinter Nights 2, they actually fixed this, but Neverwinter Nights 1, they didn't give Druids any weapon buffs. So we gave them two spells, Caustic Weapon, which gives acid bonus damage, and Shock Weapon, which gives electric damage. So Shock Weapon is also something that mages can cast, and Caustic Weapon can be cast by assassins as well. Then another thing that we did to kind of try and give druids a little bit more of a niche is we added these things called fonts, which are actually really cool. But they're really only good if you have abjuration focus, which is kind of the purpose for putting them in, is to make, the idea was to make every spell school useful. So Font of Vision actually gives some bonus to the meleeers, and if you cast that, it basically sits on the ground and does stuff for the people standing in the aura. Ice Lance, this is one of my favorite spells. It's a spell that relies on conjuration. It's kind of like another type of spell we call Orbs, which basically gives it an attack. It has to roll an AB check. It's really fun. It's very useful in the Hells because there are pit fiends that are vulnerable to ice, and I'll show you guys that in a little bit. Pristine Words. This is another one that's an enhanced spell. It's a little weird. If you had Divination Focus, it can basically make you immune to silence, at least if you can chain it over a short period of time. It's kind of tricky to use, so it doesn't get used too much. Viscid Glob, I don't really use this too much, but it does lower discipline. In certain situations, you need to do that to be able to disarm a monster. Okay, so 4th level. So we have Flame Strike, which is boosted by lore, but otherwise pretty much the same as default. Freedom of Movement, you actually get a bonus to your run speed, which is really nice. Oh, I already cast it. I already cast 2 of those. So I can show you, woo! I can run pretty fast, which is always nice. So hold monster doesn't really get used too much. Stone Skin. These guys are really weak compared to me. I didn't mean to come over here quite yet. You can watch the Town Watch get him. Oh, there we go. So a couple other spells that got modded. Stone Skin is better, but Mass Camouflage gives you, again, concealment just like Camouflage, and that actually gives it to the party. Call of Stone is another enhanced spell, so this gives you, allows you to turn things to stone. It actually has 2 saves on it. You have to fail a will save and a fortitude save, so it's really hard to get to work a lot of times. But if you're high enough level like me, it will actually it'll work. Defoliate is a spell that's actually specific against the plant racial type, which we have a few monsters like that. Last Breath is basically a version of Resurrection, that is. Murderous Mist does an area of effect poison, so it's kind of neat. Vitriolic Ray is another damage spell, so this one is a bolt. Again, this is a conjuration spell. Pesticide actually goes against vermin, so this is another spell that can be very useful against certain monsters. Let's see. Oops. This one actually hasn't been finished yet, so we have some spells that are actually work in progress. Vortex of Teeth. I love this one. A huge school of transparent piranhas descends and swarms enemies in the area, causing psionic damage every round they remain in the area of the school. This spell persists for 1 round per 5 caster levels. I don't use this too much in higher levels, although I think it would be pretty good because psionic is a type of damage esoteric, so very few monsters have resistance to it, so it's really, really nice. But when I'm leveling a druid, this is your go-to spell. This is really, really great. So, this is a really good spell. Let's see. Put my badge around, just in case. Okay, so let's see. We were on level 5. So we finished level 4. So level 5, Death Ward has some uses. Slay Living has been modified a little bit. That's really more for battle clerics, which hopefully I'll get to talk about later. Spell resistance, wall of fire actually turns into wall of stone at a certain point, which is kind of strategic. You can actually put basically a stone wall to block monsters from getting to you. Inferno is another one of these spells that's been boosted by lore. Mind Mine I don't use too much. Assay Resistance is one of our newer spells. Basically, it gives you additional spell penetration if you cast it. It's not really the spell, but it gives you basically a bonus against a monster you cast it on. Very useful in certain areas. Galvanic Cone is another enhanced spell, which basically gives you extra bonus in terms of electric damage. So let's see, this is, notice we have in parentheses here, loot breaking. One of the things that we have on higher ground is if you bash, if you cast a spell on a loot spot, you don't get what's inside of that loot spot. It just turns into broken loot, and it's not any good anymore. So loot breaking can be bad. Unfortunately, most druid spells break loot, so you have to be careful what you're casting. So Font of Resistance, I don't use too much, but it's another one of those fonts. Augury is a great enhanced spell, so it basically gives you resistance to things like Ward or Dispel to keep your buff spells from being warded off, which is kind of nice. So in terms of useful spells here, Inferno, Slay Living, occasionally Ice Storm, but usually not, even though it is lore boosted. Ice Lance is usually the better choice. Dispelling can be good if you have Abjuration especially. Greater Stone Skin is a good buff spell. Healing Circle can be useful under certain situations. Energy Buffer is really nice in that it gives you damage resistance. But this spell right here is this is the Druid spell. So originally, it was kind of similar to Harm, but in higher ground, once you hit legendary levels, it turns into something completely different, which is kind of like a little miniature Implode, but it has different spell resistance. This is probably one of the most important Druid spells on higher ground. It's just been modded to be something else. Let's see if these guys have respawned. They haven't. So we'll use it on these guys. Okay, or we won't. We'll stand there and not... He didn't fail. There we go. I have to roll the 20. So Drown is a really good go-to spell. Obviously, or somewhat obviously, it doesn't work underwater. So if you're playing on an underwater map, that's pretty much useless. Now your second best spell is, or probably second best spell, actually maybe third best spell. We'll talk about the best spell in a second. This is Crumble. So this is useful on constructs mostly, but if you happen to turn a monster to stone, which I already mentioned, at least one spell that will turn a monster to stone, you can use it for that. That let's see if we can turn this lady to stone. So we can use Crumble. And we crumbled the poor statue lady. Well, I mean, she was a bandit. She was trying to steal stuff. Something like that. So we knocked him down, but he's actually standing up. That archer gun. The only thing that's annoying about Drown is because it was originally a different kind of spell and not an AoE, you have to target it on a monster. but it's a really, really great spell. That and Crumble. Stonehold is pretty nice, but I don't use it too much. It's another conjuration spell. A lot of people don't like conjuration as much. Energy immunity. This is another enhanced spell, so if you have abjuration again, you can actually give yourself elemental, really big elemental immunity if you have high abjuration focus. Okay, so these are mass bull strength, so these are mass buff spells. Mass cure moderate wounds. This can be useful against undead, but these I don't use too much. Font of Vengeance is another spell that hasn't been finished. However, this spell right here, and not every druid uses this, it's very situational, but if you combine this with the Foundation of Stone, you can basically tank, essentially. You may also notice that my AC is really, really high. Even for our server, which we have a lot of stuff, this is high AC. So ordinarily, you know, maybe you're hitting in the high 130s. So 145 is pretty crazy. And the reason it's so high is if you take a monk level, you actually get a bonus from your wisdom in wearing light armor. And that's a modification that we made on higher ground. You might say, why would you do that? Well, number one, kind of default druids have some problems. The other problem with druids is they're really supposed to be able to shape change and melee. The problem is when you do that, it really conflicts with your spell casting. When you shift, if you have any spell slots from an item, which obviously we have a lot of those, it wipes all of those spell slots. They go blank. And so you can't cast when you're transformed. So it's really kind of a bummer. So to kind of compensate for that, is if you splash a monk level, you get high AC, and basically you can tank. This is the only caster that can really, really tank quite well. So I can walk up to monsters and usually not get killed by them. I mean, I can still get knocked down and disabled, and that's where Tortoiseshell comes in. So I will spawn a couple of monsters from the Hells. To show you what this is like. So we cast Tortoiseshell, Foundation of Stone, and there's another spell which is probably the most important druid spell, and he just blinded me, which is Nature's Balance. Let's turn things green here. So we take, these are empowered Ice Lances, boost their power a bit, plus I have lore. So ordinarily, the reason I cast this is Pit Fiends, when they jump, they can actually knock you down if you don't have enough strength. Well, I'm a caster, so I don't really have very much strength. So instead, I use this spell. He cannot knock me down. With this spell. Except Pit Fiend knocks you down. It didn't get me. And do I have any more? I got creeps. Not ready to talk about any spells yet. I have no more damage spells. This is bad. Caustic Gel, but I'm sure so notice my Foundation of Stone wore off. So he can knock me down. Now you may notice that my AC on the sheet looks bananas. And that's because this isn't really right. But what this is showing, clearly so, is that basically I cannot be flat-footed. So even though I'm standing here flat-footed, I'm not actually flat-footed. So I have my current AC. And you can't see it because sometimes the sheet doesn't work right. So what we have for that is we have a command. Let's see if I can show this to you. A list AC. So it tells me my current AC is 141. Even though it says it's 169. It's not actually that. It's 141. I can't get unflat-footed because basically I'm locked into place. And this is what keeps me from being knocked down. Let's see if mobilize works. Nope, it didn't work. So I have little hot slots here that actually cancel those two spells. This is Bigsby's interposing hand, which is Bigby's interposing hand. It's kind of annoying. Okay, so moving on. We were on 7th level, so there's a couple more spells to talk about. Or actually, we were on 6th level. We finished 6th level. So we can talk about 7th level. Firestorm is still pretty standard. It's just boosted by lore. Harm is still pretty much the same, but it's a very useful spell. Heal is pretty good. We don't really use the summon creature. True Seeing is really pretty useless unless you're low-B leveling, because most of our gear you can get True Seeing pretty easily. Creeping Doom has been modified to basically be better, lasts longer, and it also causes, if you have illusion focus, or is it conjuration? I thought it was conjuration. Let's see. Oh yes, so it is per focus feat and illusion, even though it's a conjuration spell. So inflicts 1% vulnerability per round per spell focus in the feat illusion, because illusion kind of sucks. So we boosted it with that. Aura of Vitality is a very, very useful buff spell. Spells that give dodge AC are very important, because a lot of the areas we go to have penalties, especially AC penalties, and the way you cover that are buff spells like this. Spectral Stampede is another HG enhanced spell. This is an illusion spell. It's supposed to cause knockdown or frighten. I haven't actually used it that much, partly because I don't have illusion on this particular character. In terms of focus, Word of Balance. So this is another spell. It's kind of like Word of Faith, except it does damage instead. Font of Purification is one of my favorites. This is another one of these font spells, which is best with Abjuration Focus. Let's see if I can put this on. Show you what it looks like. I think it looks really awesome. So a couple more HG enhanced spells. Fissure. This is actually a physical damage spell. It causes piercing damage. It's actually really cool, but it recently got a nerf, so it's not really quite as important as it used to be. Imprisonment is kind of like Maze. Basically, it just makes the monster sit in a pile of stone for a while and basically can't bother you. It's a very useful strategic spell. Enchantment, because there really aren't very many enchantment type spells. So part of the reason that we added these spells is to give the different spell schools for druids to make them all useful, or at least somewhat useful in some way. Okay, so moving right along to 8th level, Finger of Death. It's pretty standard. They take damage. Basically, they take negative damage from this thing. This spell right here, Nature's Balance, this is the druid spell. The most important druid spell that there is. This is the #1 reason why everybody pretty much wants a druid in their party, because all the other casters, what Nature's Balance does is it drops spell resistance. So when it drops spell resistance, that means all the other casters in the party can then use their spells much more effectively. And some monsters in some parts of the mod, basically if you don't have Nature's Balance, nobody else is going to be able to touch them. So it's a really nice spell. It used to have a save, but it basically kind of led to druids druids just running around and spamming nature's balance over and over and over again to try to get them to fail to save, which got really annoying. So we actually got rid of the save and reduced the SR drop. So it's a flat SR drop. Basically, you cast it on them, boom, their SR is dropped, which is pretty nice. So this is my go-to spell, so I put it on F12. And I put that on my trigger button on my mouse so I can just turn off the nature's balance. So the first thing that you usually do as a druid, at least when you start getting into legendary areas and the spell resistance become an issue. Premonition's a nice buff spell. Again, it's been boosted a little bit. Pretty much the same. Sunbeam is not really so useful. Bombards are very similar to meteors. They've been changed to divine damage. But unfortunately, like many other druid spells, they break loot. So you have to be very careful about where you're using those. Sunburst, this is a very useful spell in certain areas. Some monsters can pretty much only be killed by sunburst. It's also good for undead. Mass Cure Critical Wounds is another one that's good for undead. Reverse Gravity. I don't really use this too much. We kind of preferred Fissure. Unfortunately, this also got nerfed, so it's not quite as... It used to be sort of everybody's favorite spell. Not quite so much anymore. Storm Tower. This is a really cool spell. We've been using this in our newest area in Limbo, in that it basically shuts down any ranged attackers, so things like archers. So you cast this on them, basically they can't bother you anymore. It also shuts down your own archers, but hopefully you don't cast it on your own archers. Antipathy comes from enchantment. I haven't really been able to use this because it's a DC save, DC spell, and I don't have an enchantment druid. Okay, last level, Elemental Swarm. This has been completely changed from what it was. Originally, this was a series of summons, and basically you get a water elemental, and then a fire elemental, and then a blah blah blah. Now it's actually an area of effect damage spell. And what's really neat about it is it does any of the different types of elements, and it seeks. That means it uses basically whatever the best damage is, which is kind of nice. The problem is it's still a little on the weak side, so people don't use it quite as much as they probably could. Shape Change really didn't get changed for druids. It's really pretty much useless. Mass Heal is a very important spell in some areas. There are certain types of inflictions and damages that you really need Mass Heal for. Storm of Vengeance, very useful spell. Certain areas, really great. Other areas, not so great. Earthquake got changed. Instead of being physical, it actually becomes positive damage, which is really kind of nasty, especially when enemy casters start casting earthquakes on you. You probably already saw me casting Cast in Stone. This is one of my favorite druid spells, probably up there with Crumble, Drown, and Nature's Balance, and this allows you to turn other monsters to stone. So you can walk up, turn them to stone, and then you can just crumble them. And it's a really great combination, those two spells. So really great stuff. Planar Paranarch is actually not working right now, as far as I can tell. Unname. This is a divination spell. It's really kind of weird, and basically it's an insta-kill, sort of, but only for 7 monsters right now. We're sort of hoping it would be for everything, but that didn't really work out with what we were doing. So, that's pretty much all of the custom spells that we have. So what I can go on to now are the custom epic spells. So if you look here, so I have epic spell focus, conjuration, but we have legendary levels where you're going past level 40 to level 41 all the way up to level 80. So legendary, let's see if I can find my legendary. That's Paragon. Do I have anything legendary? No, I don't. I'm too high level. So once you get past level 60, we get into what we call Paragon levels. So I have Paragon spell focus. So it adds to each of your foci. So I have Paragon spell penetration, Paragon spell focus, transmutation, Paragon spell focus, evocation, and necromancy. When you just get epic focus, you get these things right here. So these are epic spells. Custom epic spells. So this is Elemental Shunt. And what it does is it gives me something along the lines of, I forget exactly. It gives you elemental immunity. So if I list immunes, so I can actually list all my immunes here. So you notice I have this ridiculous amount of acid. That's because I have an acid ring on, I would think. Yeah, so I have here, this is the Ring of the Planewalker. It's a really nice item. You have to have slain Asmodeus to use this item. So I can switch this damage type. Right now it's set to acid, which is why my acid is so high. And magical, so I can also switch those two damage types. But anyway, Elemental Shunt gives you elemental immunity. So bonus elemental immunity. So fire, electric, cold, acid, and sonic. So over here. So it's really, really useful in some of these endgame areas because they have penalties which reduce your elemental immunity. So one of the other ones I have, this one is Conjuration. It gives you concealment, which is nice. Dust to Dust. This one, I have two of these because I have the corresponding Paragon spell. So this actually causes all monsters to turn to stone. So let's see if we can turn some of our friends to stone here. Oop. Ran right in there. Hey! Don't you hit me. There we go. Then I can take Crumble. Or just drown them. Note that this is something like a level 13 area and a level 78, so it's not exactly a challenge. There are certainly areas that are. That's drown. Okay, so that's Dust to Dust. This is actually a Paragon spell. So Druid Necromancy Paragon spell. So this is the Necromancy epic spell. So this one will actually give you an extra +2 bonus to all of your stats. Which is awesome, because of course it also boosts your casting stat beyond what it would ordinarily do. Now, the second Druid custom epic spell that's probably the most important. Everybody assumes that every Druid that is partying with them is one called Immutable Force. So it used to be this would actually just turn you into, it would plot you. Basically, you could not be damaged in any way. Now it just gives you immunity to pretty much everything, but not quite everything. So if you're playing an area and your party's in trouble, I sometimes call this the oh shit button. So you click this, and basically for about 10 seconds or so, I don't remember exactly how many rounds it is, it will keep your party immune to damage. I'm actually going to run out here. Desert's actually a very nasty place. That's Implosion. Those are enemy clerics. So I'm going to Immutable Force. Hopefully all these guys are ground level. These guys have spell. So Nature's Balancing. He's trying to harm me. So you notice he tried to harm me, but now more off. Long enough. wears off. Turn those guys to stone is the other use of my epic. So I have another use of Immutable Course, if needed. Which sometimes you do. So it's also got a cooldown timer, so I can't just spam it. So I have to wait another minute before I can use it. But each spell focus has its own custom epic. So those are the ones that I have. The rest of them we actually have. Let's see if I can link this here. So we have custom epic spells. We actually have an entire post that's all about the different custom epic spells that we have. Which is right there. Because of course I don't have all of them. So this is a caster druid. This is pretty typical. Although a lot of people these days are not taking conjuration. So they're taking abjuration, because abjuration has all the cool fonts. Actually, I never did show you the font. Oh, that's right. That epic does wear off. So I wonder if I can put the next layer. Nope. Let's see, I'm immune to close. Otherwise, if I roll a 1, I will die, despite being ridiculously high level. This is kind of a level 45, maybe, area. One of the second or third post-immortal areas that actually came out. Word of Faith? Yay, isn't that fun? Crumble them all. Alright. So that's those guys. And I showed you creeps. So the other thing I can talk about, you may notice that animal empathy, I didn't have to go with animal empathy on this, but it does boost things like creeps and a couple of other spells. So we have some different skill changes. Concentration, obviously, you need to be able to cast. Heal is pretty useful for things like the healing spells, and those healing spells also do damage. I'm going to spawn something very nasty. This is one of those monsters, and I'm probably going to have to clear these. This is probably a bad idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. So these are found in the Abyss. These are called tomb motes, and they actually multiply. Not for anything that you do, just if you play around with them long enough, over time, they will multiply. Oh, crap. They die very nicely to mass heal, because they're actually undead. They're from Orcus's realm. But if you're not paying attention, you can actually get a bunch of those guys, and they just keep multiplying, and just go crazy. So, kind of scary stuff for that. So that's kind of the use of heal. Heal boosts some of those. Hide, if I weren't a druid control class, that would actually give me bonus conceal from my mass camouflage. So anybody else in the party that has hide, when I cast mass camouflage, they actually get concealment. Listen is not too useful for me. I already mentioned lore. We changed it so that lore for all casters boosts their spell damage. So it made casters pretty awesome. I have some tumble because I took a monk level, so I get tumble AC from that. And that's pretty much what there is to playing a druid. So mostly what we do... Oops. Actually, I'm going to run back out here. Is in the hells as I run up a nature's balance and then drown. Or occasionally you'll cast in stone. You can also desert Sirocco. So that's this spell right here. Let's see if I can spawn one of those. So these are one of the monsters that actually dies to Gust. So Gust of Wind will kill these things. These are really nasty. Like, as a meleeer, you do not want to hit these because they give party feedback to the whole party, and they also inflict you with hit it at the time. So you notice this is my logger up here, so it tells me it's like you should not be hitting this thing. And you notice over here it's dropping my damage immediately. The more you hit it, the worse it gets. But I can kill this with... Of course, it's got to fail to save. Come on. Oh, he's going to kill me. Good news is, I'm immortal, so if I die, I will get back up. Oops. Oh, that was not good. Oh, he followed me. I guess it's not really a he, it's a it. Come on, you little bugger. Now, as I mentioned, this spell does not have very good DC compared to some of my other spells. And I don't have a bard, so I just have to wait. What the heck? But it rolls low enough. Come on. And it killed me. Okay. So for testing purposes, since I spawned this thing and I don't want it to kill anybody else, I'm going to res myself. Although I could just get up. And maybe I'll just get up. Nobody's coming. So anyway, one of the things about this particular server is the first thing that you do, it's based on Path of Ascension. And in Path of Ascension, the whole point is basically to become immortal. And in the original Path of Ascension, or POA, you became immortal, and then you finished the mod, and you were done. So some of the people that built this mod said, hey, that's pretty cool, but what if you could have other adventures after you were immortal? And that's where our builders came in and created what we have now. So this character isn't even just immortal, it's actually demigod. So if you beat Asmodeus, you have to go through the 9 layers of hells, beat all of that, you beat Asmodeus, and then you get demigod. So if you're immortal, if you're in an area like this, even though you're dead, you can put that in scare quotes, you will get back up. So you notice, I got back up! Woohoo! So let's see. Is there anything else we can do to this guy? Probably not. Let's do the shell. I'll have to keep track. I'm not going to just despawn it. Since I spawned it in the first place, you don't normally spawn here. Finally! Okay. So now we can take a rest. So this is my caster druid. There are other versions of druids that you can build. One of them being something called a storm.